What's the most memorable conversation you've had with a stranger? A cab driver once told me how he arrived to the United States as a refugee, started a new life from scratch, and was now sending his children to college. It was an incredible story of resilience. I once met a woman who, after a 10-minute talk, informed me she was preparing to relocate to a new location and begin a new life because she felt stuck. She thanked me for simply listening. That meeting reminded me that sometimes all a person needs is to be heard. One time I was walking from downtown to meet a friend for lunch on W. Randolph-St. in Chicago. A homeless guy was walking next to me and he asked if I would talk to him. I said sure. He told me about how he was addicted to heroin and had AIDS, but that he was doing okay and was fairly happy, all things considered. I asked if he needed any money and he said no thanks, that no one really would ever talk to him and he just wanted someone to listen. I got to where I was going and we shook hands. I think about that a lot. I spoke with a stranger at the park who turned out to be an ex-convict. He spoke about how prison had changed him for the better and how he was rebuilding his life. It made me consider second chances in a different perspective. I met a man in a cafe who told me he had left his corporate job to become a street performer. He claimed to have never been happier, despite the fact that he was broke. It made me think a lot about the importance we place on money above happiness. Wrong number texted me. I befriended him. We talk every day. I had an extraordinary conversation with a homeless man who gave me life advice. He added, "You can lose everything, but if you lose yourself, you're truly lost." This talk stayed with me. Way too many. If you work in customer service or the medical field, the way in which strangers will say the craziest shit is unfathomable. I was standing outside the ICU, waiting for the doctors to come out and deliver the news of my father's passing. The shock hit me hard, and I couldn't stop crying, feeling completely lost. Then, out of nowhere, a stranger, a woman probably in her mid-30s, came down the stairs and asked if I wanted to talk. I told her about the situation, and she reassured me she would pray for him before giving me a long, comforting hug. A man at the bus station told me how he started from nothing and was able to make thousands with hard work and devotion. I used to work in insurance and had an elderly client I only spoke with over the phone. During one of our calls about his policy, the conversation shifted, and he revealed he was one of the original frogmen. He went on to share his personal experience of D-Day with me. I can't recall his name, but his story has stayed with me ever since. I had a deep conversation with a woman who believed her cat was a reincarnation of medieval knight. She insisted I address the cat as Sir Fluffington. When my beloved dog passed, I was with my wife shopping. I'm disabled, so I sat in the back and just wept quietly. An older man came by and told me it's all okay. Then he told me something nobody but my grandfather would have known. Then he told a joke only my grandfather knew cause he made it up. He patted my shoulder then said, "Everybody watches you." He winked, tipped his hat, and I swear my life my wife and I looked at each other. And when we checked the aisle he went down, he was gone. An old man told me his secret to happiness was naps. Taxi uncle. He told me in Hokkien Mandarin, you can marry a prostitute, but you must never make your girl sell herself. A girl does these work for the lack of choice, so you should accept her if you love her. But as a man, you must never make your girl sell herself for you or the family. Stupid story, but I'll tell it. I was 16, got into a car accident and anxiety was through the roof. I went through the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru and got myself some water. The lady at the window told me that everything would be okay, and that in a few years I'll look back on this situation and laugh about it. She wasn't wrong. We were in a mental health ward. This was like 10 years ago now, and I was in the acute unit. And I sat on the couch. I was brought in against my will next to a guy having a full schizophrenic episode. He turned to me with the most blackest of eyes, but for some reason I felt no intimidation, and said he was the Antichrist devil himself, and if there is someone I'd like to smite he will do that for me. Was kind of flattered, to be honest, lol. Two elder ladies came up to me when I was visiting Verona and asked me where they can find a place to stay. I tried to be polite and explain how I wasn't from here, but another region, and apologized. They ended up complimenting my English. I was 13 back then and it was a school trip. I was doing an Uber run. I ran one way as far as I could, then called an Uber to get me home around 15 miles. He picked me up on a street asking me where I came from. I told him about my run, then asked what am I running from. I purged my soul in that 29-minute drive and felt like I said what I couldn't say to anyone I knew. Thank you, buddy. I'm retired from the Navy Canada. Years ago, during a port visit to Baltimore, myself and a number of the ship's company jumped on a small bus from the pier to downtown. A local happened to get on the bus with us and asked us if we had ever heard the story of how the American anthem was created. and then proceeded to tell us a detailed history of Fort McHenry and the events of the attack. It was my first time hearing the story, and the man who told it did an excellent job. The details have faded, but the memory is still strong.